Welcome to Girl Talk. Welcome, ladies. Thank you for joining us today. Hey. Today we want to talk about, again, of course, like all our topics, but a very important one, about vulnerability. Okay, so we want to cover basic questions. Who, what, where, how, and when. Okay, so, and why, I missed that one, right? And why. So we're basically covering all aspects of what it means to be vulnerable, who to be vulnerable with, why we even decide or take the risk of being vulnerable. What does vulnerable mean to you guys?
I think the way I interpret it is just making yourself, putting yourself in a position where it's easy for you to fall into sin or like into a problem or to get hurt in some way, like for something, putting yourself in a position that something, like an outcome is more easy to happen.
Okay. Any other?
I feel like what vulnerable means to me is when I'm at my weakest point where I can easily fall and trip.
Okay, you're at your weakest point. So to be vulnerable is your weak point, basically. Okay. So I'm going to just read vulnerable from dictionary.com. Capable of or susceptible to being wounded or hurt, as by a weapon, okay, or a vulnerable part of your body. But vulnerability goes as far as to say it could be by a weapon, right? So we're not going to talk about a physical weapon here, obviously, although that can leave you vulnerable. We're going to talk about susceptible to being wounded or hurt. So who do we leave ourselves open to? We'll start with that. Who in our life do we kind of open ourselves to that would leave us wounded or hurt?
Okay. Our friends, we tell them all our secrets and we just get really close to them and we don't really know what their actions can be or can turn into. So they're unpredictable, which could leave us vulnerable.
Okay, friends. Who else?
Sometimes girls leave themselves vulnerable with guys, like boys. They just put themselves in a situation where their feelings are like so into it that they're just vulnerable to do whatever he says.
Friends, boys? Anyone else?
Sometimes family. Like I feel like just because they're your family doesn't mean that they could hurt you. They're capable of doing it because they're humans too, but you leave yourself open to them and you trust them with all your heart because they're supposed to be there for you. But sometimes their vision is foggy, so they don't really see what they're doing and they don't know that it could hurt you, which at that point you'll be very vulnerable.
Maybe take advantage of the fact that you love and care about them. Yeah. So family, friends, boys, of course. So that covers the who, right? Moving on to when does it happen with these people. So boys, vulnerable almost all the time, right? We're girls. Our emotions can get out of control sometimes. And guys just have a way of like hitting that target, right? So when is it that we give them the chance? What is it that they do, or when, or what kind of situation?
I think the attention. Yeah. That's when we're most vulnerable. If a guy gives me a compliment like, "Oh, your hair looks pretty today," I'll be like, "Oh, thanks. I guess it does look pretty today," you know. So I'll be vulnerable at that point.
I know for me, like when I'm most vulnerable is when I get really close to someone. So if it was with a guy, then I guess if we like developed a friendship, I would be like really vulnerable to anything.
So putting your trust in someone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like especially a guy, because you would, like talking to a guy is obviously different than like, even if it's like a friend thing, whatever, like it's different than talking with like one of your girlfriends, because it's like, you'd be more vulnerable because you would, I don't know, like the advice or whatever, like even if you guys are like really close, like if anything happens, like I feel like, I don't know if most girls, I guess, like they would feel like more vulnerable with a guy than like a girl, like because it's.
So with a guy. Okay, so why don't we start there? It seems that for the most part, almost every girl is vulnerable when it comes to guys, right? Whether it's the compliments that they get or the sweet talking, playing the game, maybe even a guy that you've been friends with and now just likes you, right? You end up trusting them and feeling vulnerable. So when is it that we should create lines or boundaries? Or should we? He's just a friend, right? I could be vulnerable with him. Do we establish boundaries, or do we kind of just leave it open-ended?
I think most of us don't establish boundaries because we don't really know like our limits. So we just assume that we're like you and the guy are always going to be friends, and it's never going to escalate to anything more. So you just put yourself in that position where, you know, feelings might grow. So that obviously leaves both of you vulnerable.
I feel like with boys especially, you should have boundaries, even if they are your friends or not. Even if it doesn't develop into anything, you should always have boundaries. Like, the boy is always going to be different than one of your girlfriends, as Eva said. So I wouldn't go up to one of my close guy friends and give him a kiss on the cheek like I do with the other girls. You know, you always have to set. Yeah, you always have to set boundaries for yourself, no matter, because you don't know which way it's going to fall. Maybe you will have feelings for him.
Does anyone disagree with that? Because I know some girls that do. That they're just like, okay, no, nothing can ever happen, and he's like the closest person to me, and I trust him with everything, and this is who I am vulnerable with. Why would I give him up? I can actually trust to be vulnerable with him. Why give that up?
I actually thought that when I was younger, and I disagreed with all the servants when they said boys and girls couldn't be best friends. But then when it actually happened to me, it happened with one of my close friends, and like it honestly killed the friendship. Like now we'll talk, but it won't be like we're not best friends anymore or anything. It'll be like a hi-bye kind of thing. But it honestly killed the relationship. And at that time, I was, I guess, vulnerable to him because like we were just so close. But I didn't see it coming.
Like, alright, you guys are probably like really good friends and you think you could share secrets and stuff, but just like you're bound to be in like a point in your friendship where you're gonna be attracted to their like them keeping your secrets, or their advice is gonna attract you to them. Like, oh wow, I like how he, like, because it's a guy, it's not a girl. So like
Emotionally.
yeah, emotionally, you guys are gonna be attracted, and he doesn't even have like. Some of them say, but he's not even cute. So it's not even about like their physical appearance. Like sometimes like you're just attracted by knowing that he's there for advice, or he's there, you know, if like you need a shoulder to cry on, that it's not a girl, it's a guy. So that's like eventually you're gonna be like, you're gonna actually have more feelings than as a best friend for that guy.
Does anyone disagree?
I mean, I agree. Like, you never know, like, what might happen. Like, okay, you're saying, like, you're just best friends. Like, I just need, like Eva said, I just need someone to, like, you know, like, it's nice having, like, your girlfriends, but it'd be nice, like, having a guy who, like, understands how you feel, but, like, you never know what it might lead to.
Yeah, I don't see that can work, the whole best friend thing. Just an excuse to say that, no, we're not talking like that or dating. We're best friends. Like, that's the farthest you can go than actually, like, the next step.
So do you think that girls actually set these limits that you're talking about?
I don't really think most girls set limits for themselves, and it might be just, like, something small that you might not, like, think of, like, talking on the phone past 12 or texting. I mean, I think there might be a difference, like me personally, between like texting and talking on the phone. Like if it's talking on the phone, all right, that's a little like shady, but if it's texting, I mean, I don't know, me personally, like it might just be like a random, like just a normal conversation, like what's up, I'm like bored right now and everyone's sleeping, and that's all.
The
but
conversation could die on like text.
yeah,
but
like it dies off. Like it dies off phone. Like you never know. What if the girl like liked him? Like, oh, he fell asleep on me talking on the phone, and like blah blah blah. So yeah.
So that's actually leads us to when, you know, at what times are we vulnerable? So you're saying there's a difference between calls and texts. Yeah. So that in itself is probably a boundary that should be established, right? And so do you think that at any point of the day you're more vulnerable than at others? like certain times, or?
I like what Sandra said, like, you're on the phone past 12, like setting time boundaries also is important, because I find that people are more vulnerable at night, like when they're like alone or bored or tired, whatever.
Do you think the darkness has anything to do with it? Because, I mean, even my own servants have said that to me, where it's just a no, like at night, you're like by yourself, and you're all, you know,
something about like the night,
dreamy and, you know, romantic, and you spend time on the phone, and you fall asleep on the phone, or you hear him breathing as he's sleeping, like things like, you know, borderline a little ridiculous, right? But couples or best friends, right? They do this stuff. So do you think that you're vulnerable at night? Or do you think that's kind of just
I think it's most common at night. I don't know why. I can't see it in the day happening. Like in the day you're busy in the day. At night it's like when you're just like in your room, when you're on the computer, when you're like right next to your phone. So I think that's when you're most vulnerable, and just at night gives it that feeling. I don't know, like that.
I feel like people also like during rainy days for some reason, like you're sitting home alone, it's raining outside, you're sitting by the window, like conversation could like spark up. I don't know why. It's just, yeah.
But I think darkness does have an effect, because I know if I'm texting like my best friend at nighttime, and my mom hates when I text at night, so I'll be like under the covers like texting, so she doesn't see the light from my cell phone. So I think darkness does have an effect, because it's like kind of secretive. It's like exclusive, basically.
Which actually, I mean, to bring it back to Christianity, like the darkness is the absence of light in general. So if we're not doing things in the light and we're hiding it, you know, there's a darkness to that. Or rather, during the darkness, we're hiding things, right? And it doesn't become, it becomes about right and wrong after a certain extent. It's just, are we doing the right thing by talking, even texting a guy at random times of the night? I mean, I'm not going to state a general rule, because everyone's situation is different. Everyone's relationship or friendships are different. So I'm not going to, you know, state a specific rule. But I think coming from you guys and saying, you know, at night you are more vulnerable, after a certain time, it's not appropriate. Because the guy even can get the wrong idea, no? Yeah. Do they get the wrong idea, or is it just norm now?
I think it's mainly girls, because they have like a more emotional like attachment. So maybe the guy is just like, oh, it's just a conversation, like no big deal. But the girl's like, oh my God, he's texting me, and it's like past like 3 a.m.
He's staying up to talk to me, right? So she ends up being more vulnerable, and she's like, oh, well, like now he wants to talk to me, so I can share all these secrets with him, and I can let him into me, you know? I could let him into myself and dreams and aspirations on all these things that make you you.
Or like vice versa, like the guy could think that too about the girl, like it's not just the girl. Like he could think like, oh, she's thinking of me when she randomly texted me at this time of night, or like whatever she's acting, how, you know, towards him, they definitely think like something.
Or they can both like just be bored, and then boredom leads to many things.
Right. I think the devil gets us with laziness, and he gets us with pride. Pride that we think that we can't fall, right? So we don't set these boundaries for ourselves. And he gets us with laziness and boredom, where I have nothing to do at home and I really just want the company. And these things are thrown at us, and at the end of the day, we fall, right? And being vulnerable to people who are trustworthy at the right time and in wisdom, I think there's a secret, you know, it's secret in a way, you know, between a husband and wife, between family that trust each other, right, that don't abuse each other, and friends that don't abuse each other. And at the end of the day, that could be a very valuable thing. But everything that is done in the darkness is in secret. And I think to overcome vulnerability, you should do everything in the light. Okay, thank you girls so much for joining us, and thank you for joining today. We hope you enjoyed our show. Until next time on Girl Talk.